Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The House of Representatives has voted to approve a non-binding war powers resolution aimed at limiting President Trump's ability to take further military action against Iran without congressional approval. President Trump ratcheted up tensions with Iran by assassinating Iranian commander Qasem Soleimani in a targeted drone strike at the Baghdad International Airport last week. Thursday's 224-194 House vote included 3 Republicans voting yes and 8 Democrats voting no. The resolution now heads to the Senate. The vote came as Iran's ambassador to the United Nations blasted the U.S. at the UN Security Council, speaking on behalf of Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif, who was unable to address the Security Council himself after the U.S. denied him a visa in violation of a 1947 U.S.-UN agreement. This is Ambassador Majid Takhtravanchi.
I'm here today to deliver a statement on behalf of His Excellency Mr. Zarif, whose visa was denied by the United States in contravention of the headquarters agreement. And here is his statement. We are meeting today to discuss a momentous imperative we are all confronted with. The world is at a crossroads. With the end of monopolies on power, one unhinged regime is frantically clamoring to turn back time.
Thousands gathered in Chicago, New York, Seattle, and dozens of other cities to protest war with Iran Thursday night. The New York Times has obtained video that appears to show an Iranian missile hitting the Boeing 737 jet that crashed shortly after takeoff in Tehran Wednesday, killing all 176 people on board. The crash came hours after Iran fired ballistic missiles at 2 Iraqi military bases, which housed Iraqi and U.S. troops in retaliation for General Soleimani's assassination. This is Canadian Foreign Minister François-Philippe Champagne.
We have intelligence from multiple sources, including our allies and our own intelligence, that indicates that the plane was shot down by an Iranian surface-to-air missile. This may well have been unintentional.
Iranian officials have denied allegations they mistakenly shot down the passenger jet that was headed to Kiev, Ukraine. The inquiry into the plane crash in Tehran comes as the jet's manufacturer, Boeing, is facing even more scrutiny over its troubled 737 MAX jet. As released, internal emails show Boeing employees talking about deceiving federal regulators and joking about potential safety flaws in the plane's design ahead of the 2 fatal plane crashes that killed all 346 people on board in Indonesia and Ethiopia. In one email, an employee wrote, quote, "This airplane is designed by clowns who are in turn supervised by monkeys," unquote. In another, an employee asked a colleague, quote, "Would you put your family on a MAX simulator-trained aircraft? I wouldn't," unquote. In a third, a worker wrote in apparent reference to interactions with the FAA, quote, "I still haven't been forgiven by God for the covering up I did last year," unquote. The Boeing 737 MAX has been grounded worldwide. President Trump's proposing changing the nation's oldest environmental law to exempt large infrastructure projects such as pipelines and power plants from environmental review. If enacted, the changes would exempt agencies from considering the cumulative environmental impacts of projects, which could include studying the climate crisis. In immigration news, a Mexican asylum seeker died by suicide Wednesday when he slit his own throat after being denied entry into the United States at the Far Reynosa International Bridge at the Texas-Mexico border. Meanwhile, in Louisiana, 2 asylum seekers from India are reportedly on the brink of death as their hunger strike against their prolonged detention stretches into its 69th day. Medical staff at the LaSalle ICE immigration jail are force hydrating the 2 men. And in Arizona, the chief of the Tohono O'odham Nation says the construction of the border wall on the nation's land may have unearthed ancient human remains inside the Organ Pipe Cactus National Monument in the Sonoran Desert. In election news, 6 presidential candidates, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, Joe Biden, and Tom Steyer, will take to the stage for the final Democratic debate before the Iowa caucus. It will happen in Des Moines next Tuesday. All the candidates on stage will be white after New Jersey Senator Cory Booker and entrepreneur Andrew Yang did not qualify for the debate. Billionaire Tom Steyer qualified after pouring more than $115 million of his own money into his campaign. Billionaire former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg did not qualify for the debate, despite spending nearly $170 million of his own money on ads. In France, at least 500,000 people flooded the streets across the country Thursday to show their support for the unionized rail workers whose strike against French President Emmanuel Macron's attempted pension overhaul has now become the longest transportation strike in French history. This is Yuli Yamamoto.
Edouard Philippe dares to say that women are the great winners of the reform. That's not true and awful. He knows that women are the biggest losers from the reform. Why? Because he knows that they have different jobs, have to take more care of children, work part-time. So for sure they have careers with gaps, shorter careers. So if you take the whole career into account, women will be hit the hardest.
In the United States, Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar has declared a public health emergency for Puerto Rico after a 6.4 magnitude earthquake rocked the island early Tuesday, killing at least one person and plunging nearly the entire population into darkness. As of Thursday, electrical power was restored to about half of residents. The Puerto Rico Electric Energy Agency says its goal is to restore power for all residents by this weekend. In New York, a grand jury indicted the suspect in the Hanukkah attack for 5 more federal hate crimes Thursday. Grafton Thomas allegedly stabbed at least 5 Jewish worshippers who were celebrating Hanukkah at a rabbi's house in Muncie, New York last month. His lawyers say he's mentally ill. A new study suggests that raising the minimum wage by $1 an hour could save thousands of lives of people from dying by suicide each year, and that if the minimum wage had been at least $2 an hour higher, nearly 60,000 lives could have been saved between 1990 and 2015. Suicide is now the second leading cause of death in the United States among children and youth ages 10 to 24, with the suicide rate among black youth rising faster than any other racial group. And in Texas, Yolanda Carr has died. She was the mother of Tatiana Jefferson, the African-American woman who was killed by a white police officer in October. Carr had been fighting illness at the time of her daughter's death, and Tatiana Jefferson, known to the family as Tay, had been her caretaker. Former Fort Worth police officer Aaron Dean shot Jefferson through her bedroom window while responding to a non-emergency wellness check called for by a neighbor who saw Tay's front door had been left open. The officer never identified himself as a police officer. Tatiana's father also died in November of a heart attack less than 1 month after his daughter's death. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.